On the eve of our engagement, he announced he wanted one final night of freedom, a last bachelor party with his friends. He had made it clear beyond doubt that I was absolutely forbidden from interfering. I knew his first love, the woman who had lingered in his memory, had returned to the country only 2 weeks earlier. Trusting him, I held back and asked no questions. But that night, a photo appeared on my phone. He lay shirtless on a hotel bed, another woman wrapped in his arms. Forcing myself to stay calm, I called him, but he didn't pick up. Every one of his friends' phones was turned off. My hand shook as I opened her profile and found her recent update, which had been posted only minutes before. In the photo, he wore a striking groom's suit, holding a stunning woman close as he pressed a kiss to her lips. His best friend held out an engagement ring, a proud grin on his face. Beneath the photo, the caption read, "We once joked about making him my only best man, and now here we are, finally making it happen." My eyes lingered on the photo, scrutinizing every detail, hoping to catch the faintest sign that he was doing this against his will. But his smile was carefree, his gaze fixed solely on her, looking utterly content and at peace. I could no longer find any excuse to deceive myself. And with each thought, a deep ache tightened around my heart as if an unseen hand was squeezing it. She had been his high school love. They'd dated only 3 months, yet he hadn't let her go in over a decade. Even in his sleep, he would utter her name. I had confronted him about it before, even stirred up a scene, but he'd always brushed it off with a carefree it's in the past. I convinced myself that no one could be so haunted by a fleeting 3-month romance, reasoning that his dreams were nothing more than random, meaningless echoes. Yet now I could no longer fool myself. His actions had made everything heartbreakingly clear. Messages from friends and family still poured in, filled with warm congratulations for our engagement. I let out a bitter laugh and sent him a single text. "The engagement is off. Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness." After a long silence, he finally replied, "What nonsense are you talking about? End this now, or there will be consequences." I found myself laughing bitterly at his unnerving composure, the way he pretended as though nothing had changed. Could this truly be the man I had loved for 10 years? Now he felt tainted beyond measure. Without a reply, I blocked and deleted him in an instant. Before me, the red invitations we had crafted together seemed like a cruel joke. The more I looked, the more absurd they appeared. So I cast them to the floor and set them ablaze. Watching the flames erase the memory, I couldn't fathom how he could cling to his first love yet spend a decade by my side, nor why he would betray me so ruthlessly. Just before our engagement, memories of our years together surged back, and I realized he had never looked as carefree and radiant with me as he did in that photo. He was attractive and privileged, and as an only son, he had taken over his family's business right after college. He was an impressive figure among his peers. Despite my humble beginnings, I had somehow won his affection. No one quite understood it, least of all me. I often felt as if I were stretching beyond my station. His friends had dropped enough hints, saying women across continents yearned for him, and that being with me was a favor, as though he were doing charity. At the time, I thought they only meant to protect him. Looking back now, I realized that neither he nor his friends had ever truly respected me or held me in high regard. My love for him had been genuine and profound. When he asked me to leave my job and embrace the role of a full-time housewife, I agreed without hesitation. My sole desire was to handle everything at home so he could dedicate himself entirely to his career. However, by offering him such freedom, I had unwittingly allowed others to exploit it. I didn't care who held the reins in our relationship. My only concern was whether his eyes saw only me. If they didn't, I wouldn't think twice about tossing aside this half-baked connection. Cheating occurred either never or countless times, and I was determined not to be the woman left wondering about her husband's loyalty. So I took to social media to announce the end of our engagement. Almost immediately, messages and calls poured in, but he remained silent. I could only imagine him contentedly wrapped in her embrace. After what felt like an eternity of silence, I got up and began to gather his belongings. He had never desired to live with me, so he had only brought a few items, which took no more than half an hour to pack and return to his mansion. Once I finished, I collapsed onto my bed, a wave of relief washing over me as I pulled the covers over my head and slept soundly until noon the next day. My phone rang with a delivery alert, but his furious voice broke through the calm. "What is the meaning of this?"
Come out here right now.
I could hardly believe it. He had the audacity to cheat on me so openly and still dare to question me. As I opened the door, there he stood, his glare sharp and filled with fury the moment his brows knitted together in frustration. With no hesitation, he began to hurl accusations at me, his voice filled with indignation. "Do you think marriage is just a game? You can't simply call off an engagement because it suits you." He went on, "What's with this tantrum? I'm already drowning in work, and now you want to add to my stress?" The delivery man looked like a deer caught in headlights, but I remained composed as I took my food and thanked him. My calmness seemed to provoke him even more as he seized the meal from my hands and flung it to the ground, sending it crashing everywhere. The delivery guy stood there, bewildered, but I managed to suppress my anger and instructed him to leave before turning back to my ex, irritation bubbling beneath the surface, though my face remained still. All the affection I once harbored for him had evaporated, replaced by a deep-seated disgust. He crushed the food container underfoot, sneering, "You think this is over? You owe me an explanation. How can you even think of eating when we haven't resolved this?" This unreasonable and disrespectful side of him made me question everything I had ever loved about him. Did I truly cherish his blatant disregard for me? Or perhaps it was his childish tantrums that had once drawn me in. With a chilling gaze, I confronted him. "Do you really think there's anything left for us to settle? Weren't you already in her bed last night?" His expression flickered for just an instant, but he swiftly regained his composure, flashing a confident smirk. "Oh, is that why you called off the engagement? I know you're not really serious about this. Just say you lost a game of truth or dare last night." "All right." Exhausted, I marveled at his astounding nerve. But love had slipped through my fingers like sand, and I felt no ties remaining. "If you're done talking, leave. If you want to get married, go find her." I began to shut the door, but he wedged his hand in the edge, biting into his skin, leaving angry red marks in its wake. When I finally released my grip and stepped back, he misread the gesture as a sign of softening, pulling me into his embrace. The scent of another woman's perfume assaulted my senses, causing me to recoil in revulsion. I instinctively pushed him away, my voice sharp as I demanded, "Get off me." His eyes widened in disbelief, shock etching his features. "You're telling me to get out?" In the 10 years of our relationship, I had never uttered a harsh word to him. This was the very first time. He glared at me, a mix of anger and disbelief flashing in his eyes. But I stood my ground, unwavering. Meeting his gaze with cold resolve, I declared, "I'll say this one last time. We're over. You wouldn't want everyone to know you spent the night with her on the eve of our engagement, would you?" Startled, he still gripped my shoulder with his injured hand, his voice laced with incredulity.
"What are you talking about? I didn't do anything like that."
"Did someone tell you otherwise?" He had always been forceful and overbearing, never once allowing a hint of vulnerability to surface in my presence. In the past, I would have held his hand, shouldering all the blame myself. But now I sensed he wouldn't grasp the truth until it struck him squarely in the face. So without hesitation, I pulled up the photo she had sent me. The moment he caught sight of it, his eyes narrowed. I couldn't resist the urge to be sarcastic. "Look at the angle of the shot. Who do you think took it? She's practically rubbing it in my face. Shouldn't I just step aside gracefully and let you two enjoy your romance?" I added, "I have no interest in playing out some cliché love triangle. May you two have a wonderful life together." His expression darkened, and he attempted to clarify. "She has cancer." I let out a dry laugh. "And what does that have to do with me?" His voice softened, almost regretful. Her last wish was to have a fake wedding with me. I didn't engage in anything with her last night, and I don't even know when that picture was taken. Please don't think of me as some lowlife." I scoffed in disbelief. So you felt sorry for your ex with cancer and abandoned me on the night before our engagement to pretend to marry her? There's a picture of it. And now you're accusing me of having a dirty mind? You truly are a model of nobility and kindness. I pressed on. If you feel that strongly for her, why not make it official? Go ahead. Announce it to everyone. Clearly, I'm not worthy of someone as compassionate as you. His eyes glistened with unshed tears, yet he stubbornly clung to my sleeve. Stop saying that. Just as I was about to urge him to leave, my phone rang. It was his mother. I didn't answer his mother's call. I was done explaining myself, done humbling myself before a family that never respected me. I watched him watch me, probably expecting me to pick up the phone, but all I wanted in that moment was for him to walk out of my life for good. I wanted him to leave, to take his lies and empty promises of a future that I now knew would never happen. He just stood there, as if waiting for me to relent, like I had so many times over the years. But this time was different. I looked him in the eye and said, with a calmness I didn't even know I had, "You should leave now. You've already got what you wanted, so take your excuses and get out." He laughed, a nervous, forced laugh, trying to cover his discomfort with that smug superiority that had stopped intimidating me long ago. "You're really making a big deal out of nothing," he said, a condescending tone in his voice, as if I were a petulant child. "You think you're doing yourself a favor by ending this, but deep down you know you need me." I took a deep breath, trying to rein in the fury bubbling up inside me. How could he be so arrogant? How dare he assume that I needed him after everything? For years, I'd been the pillar of his life, giving up my dreams and career so he could focus on the family business without worrying about anything at home. I was the one who always stood by his side while he treated me like an option, a second choice, a consolation prize. I breathed deeply, but the calm I was trying to maintain was slipping. The image of him in bed with another woman was still fresh in my mind, seared into my memory. Everything I had done for him now felt like a cruel joke. And there he was, staring at me as if I were merely a level in a game he could reset whenever he pleased. "You think I need you?" I asked, my voice laced with bitterness. "Do you really believe that, after all this, I'd still be willing to overlook your pathetic excuse about a dying ex with one last wish? You were there, having a great time, laughing like I was nothing to you. Like these years meant absolutely nothing." I paused, letting my words hang in the air, heavy and real. He tried to interrupt, but I cut him off. You know what's even more infuriating? That I let myself be fooled for so long. I believed in your promises, in your empty words. I gave up everything to be your perfect little housewife, the woman you could flaunt for appearances while living a double life behind my back. But the truth is, you never saw me as your equal. I was just a convenient ornament. He shook his head, looking annoyed, as if I were ungrateful for not appreciating the sacrifices he had made. "I did what I could to take care of you, give you the best life you could ever have. And now you're acting like I'm the villain." He glared at me, trying to intimidate me, but I was long past that. "If you think giving me a house and paying the bills was enough, then you really never understood anything about me. I never needed luxury or status or any of the show. All I wanted was respect. But I guess that was too much to ask." Every word I said felt like freedom, as if I were finally breaking the invisible chains he'd held me with. And for the first time, he seemed to realize he'd lost control over me. He took a deep breath, his face flushed, struggling to keep his composure, but it was clear he was falling apart inside. "You're making a mistake, and I'm not going to wait around for you to come to your senses. You're going to regret this." He turned away, muttering something about me being ungrateful, but I didn't care anymore. As soon as he was gone, silence filled the house. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. That silence wasn't empty. It was liberating. I walked over to the living room and sat on the couch, taking in the space around me. Every corner I had decorated, trying to create a home for us. Now, all of it felt like part of a sham. The next day, I got a message from a mutual friend. She asked if I was all right and, with a hesitant tone, revealed that he was already spreading rumors about me, claiming I had been unstable, dramatic, and that he'd tried everything to save our relationship, but that I was determined to ruin it. That was the last straw. For years, he had manipulated the story, always casting himself as the hero, while I was the weak one, the immature one who couldn't understand his responsibilities. This time, the truth was coming out. I went to social media and wrote everything, every detail of the betrayal, the public humiliation, the hidden contempt he'd shown me over the years. I shared the sacrifices I'd made, the broken promises, and finally, the deceitful bachelor party he used as a cover to meet up with his ex. The responses were immediate. Friends who I thought had distanced themselves reached out to offer support. Some of his family members, who had always treated me coldly, tried to defend him, but the damage was done. The mask he wore for the world had finally shattered. A few days later, he showed up at my door again, looking worn out. He begged me to stop, said I was ruining his life and that none of this was necessary. But I felt no sympathy, no guilt. He hadn't shown me any consideration when he laughed by another woman's side, when he publicly humiliated me. Now he had to face the consequences of his actions. "You think I'm ruining your life?" I asked, my voice steady. "Maybe you should have thought about that before betraying me, before treating me like something you owned." All I did was tell the truth. "Maybe for the first time, you're finally seeing the damage you caused." He tried to argue, but I simply closed the door in his face. The peace I felt in that moment was indescribable. In the days that followed, a calmness almost surreal settled over me. Every detail of the life I had built alongside him now felt like a well-rehearsed lie, and the most ironic part was that I, so blinded by love, had believed every word, every empty promise. I knew he was furious, trying to control the damage my post had caused, but I was past caring. For the first time, I felt that control was in my hands, and I had no intention of giving it back. I began rethinking everything I had given up for him. There was a career I'd put aside, friends I'd distanced myself from, opportunities I'd ignored, all in my commitment to being the perfect partner for him. I decided to reclaim who I was before I met him, and that began with a simple decision to go back to work. An old colleague, who had heard my story through social media, reached out with a job offer at the company where he now held a senior position. Accepting that offer felt like opening a door to a new life. A few days into my new job, I heard that he was struggling with the family business. Clients had heard the stories, and the rumors of his infidelity were beginning to hurt his public image. He contacted me again, this time with a formal plea for reconciliation to protect his family's reputation. "We can keep up appearances," he said, with that calculated tone he always used. "No one needs to know the details. People will forget, and we can go back to being that ideal couple." Hearing those words, something inside me revolted. He really believed I'd be willing to erase everything just to save his image. I looked at him, finally seeing him for who he truly was: manipulative, arrogant, incapable of genuine regret. My voice was steady, cold. "The only thing we'll be keeping is the distance between us. Your show is over, and the only reputation you should worry about saving now is your own." Days turned into weeks, and I watched his life slowly unravel. Clients pulling away, friends starting to see his true colors. But I decided that wasn't enough. I wanted more than just to see him lose contracts. I wanted him to feel the emptiness and frustration he had made me feel. And for that, I needed a more elaborate revenge, something that would hit him where it hurt most: his status. Among the things he'd left behind, I found some old documents related to the family business. There were records, contracts, and financial information revealing transactions that didn't exactly follow ethical business practices. I knew that, in the right hands, this information could cause even more damage. I spoke with a lawyer I knew, who assured me these documents would be of great interest to certain authorities and, of course, his competitors. As soon as I sent copies of those questionable transactions to a few key people in the industry, the consequences began to unfold. He was called in to explain himself, and what started as rumors turned into an official investigation. The reputation he'd cherished so much was falling apart, but he had no idea that the downfall was only just beginning. Meanwhile, I was moving on with my life. My new job was fulfilling, and I was reconnecting with friends who now looked at me with a new sense of respect that I hadn't thought possible. They knew what I'd been through, and they celebrated every small victory, every step I took in rebuilding my life. And with each accomplishment, my confidence and self-worth grew in ways I had never experienced before. Then I found out he was trying to attack me in other ways, maybe out of desperation. He started spreading stories that I was mentally unstable and vengeful. But, ironically, these attempts only made him seem more pathetic. People were beginning to see the truth, not just about who he was, but about the strong, determined woman I was becoming. Shortly after that, I heard that he had completely lost control of the company. His own family, desperate to save what was left, decided to remove him from his position. The business was taken over by a younger cousin, and he was left without any significant role in the empire he had once flaunted so proudly. It was like watching an empire he thought was unbreakable crumble to pieces. And as he fell, I rose. I earned a promotion at work, and that was just the beginning of a series of opportunities that began coming my way. I decided it was time to invest in myself truly. I started attending seminars, taking courses to enhance my skills, and soon enough, I found myself inspiring others who had been through similar situations. Without realizing it, I had become a symbol of strength and resilience. With each supportive message I received, each new connection I made, I felt that my life was finally on the path I had always wanted. I was now an independent, fulfilled woman, and I allowed myself to dream again, dreams that, this time, belonged only to me.